Hey podcast lovers, thank you for checking out this Coins Age Media podcast. Before we get going with this episode, we have got 3 audio podcasts for you to choose from. We have got Here's Rodder's Vlogs and Reviews podcast, we have got Sceam Me Up Botty, and we have got Hellmouth Hotline. So you may be listening to one of the 3 on this episode, but if you haven't checked out the other 2, I would really appreciate it if you go over, have a little listen, and if you enjoy them, please get subscribed to them. So let's get going with this audio podcast that you've tuned in for. Hey guys, what's happening? Welcome along to Sceam Me Up Botty. We're going to continue on with Star Trek once more. Big surprise, you've downloaded this podcast. It has a fat middle-aged agent in its artwork photoshopped into the bridge of the Enterprise D, doing one of those, hey, a bit like the space age equivalent of Fonzie from Happy Days. So we've done the first 6 movies up until now, and number 7, which was released in 94, I want to say. Let me just bring up my notes right here. Yes, release date November 18th 1994. Star Trek Generations. Of course, we lost the numbers when we got to these movies here. We always had Star Trek with the Roman numerals behind it for the first 6 movies, but since the Next Generation cast came in, they just went with names and no numbers. So this is the 7th film in the movie franchise, and this is the handoff between the original cast to the Next Generation cast as far as the movies go. And yes, there was a lot of excitement for this movie when it was coming. I can remember being pretty excited myself, because I was a huge fan of the film franchise. And The Next Generation was the show that, as a child, I remember watching on a weekly basis when it came out. So I was more, although I had always seen the classic series of Star Trek on reruns, there's just something nice about being present in that original run of the Next Generation. So whenever I came up to the point where they were getting their own movies, was pretty exciting. But in all fairness, Star Trek Generations, I don't think there's any real middle ground with this film. You'll either love it or you'll hate it. I don't think, there's no halfway house in this one at all, I don't think. I have been in the presence of some people that have watched this movie in the last 7 or 8 years, and you know what, the pace of films these days is like miles ahead of what the Star Trek movies were at this point here. Like, newer audiences, I don't think would enjoy this as much as your hardcore fan would, but I love it. It's a really good movie. It's not the best of the Next Generation movies, but it is a nice handover from the original cast to the new cast. So basically, at the beginning of Star Trek Generations, we start off in 2293, and of course Captain Kirk and Scotty and Chekhov came as a guests of honour at the maiden voyage of the Enterprise B during a shakedown cruise, which is basically the Excelsior. If you remember Excelsior from the earlier movies, it's basically that ship with a few redesigns and around the engineering section. And I remember a guy freaking out whenever he watched the movie, because he was I wouldn't call him a hardcore Trekkie, but he was one of these guys that thought he knew absolutely everything about the movies, and he did come up with a very, very good point. And the opening of the movie, the Enterprise B comes across this energy ribbon in space and gets, they're trying to save passengers from these two ships, and they get caught up in the gravitational well of what we later find out to be the Nexus. And Kirk is killed. Well, according to history, he was killed in this mission trying to save Enterprise B. He went down into the engineering section of the ship to work out this little gadget so that they could, use a deflector dish to fire beam into this ribbon and let them escape. And it's just a nice little nod to the whole classic relationship between him and Scotty coming up with something on the fly that'll save the ship. But there's a nice little moment there, mind you, whenever the new captain for the Enterprise B tells Captain Kirk that the bridge is yours, and for one last time Kirk gets to sit down in the captain's chair of the Starship Enterprise, even though it's not his Enterprise, the new Enterprise. And he thinks for a second, and he's like, you know what, your place is on the bridge of your ship. So he swaps places with the captain. The captain was originally going to go and do this. But to get back to the point of what this guy was pointing out, the redesign of Enterprise B, down at the bottom of the ship and around the engineering section of that, there's like two. If you set it side by side with the Excelsior was very, just rounded at the bottom, and this one kind of came down from the neck and then came out a little bit. And there's just two extra sections kind of added there on either side of it, down near the bottom. Now that's where the ribbon hits the ship and blasts out that section of the hull and sucking Kirk into the Nexus, which will come into play later on in the film. And this guy was freaking out. He said, Captain Kirk shouldn't have died there if they hadn't redesigned that ship. If it just looked like the original Excelsior, that beam would have just passed by the ship harmlessly and whatnot. What? I thought it was funny. I suppose you had to be there. But anyway, Chekhov and Scotty and the new Enterprise captain come rushing down to the engineering section and see the room where Kirk was at, and just they open the door. Of course, the force fields are there, and all they can see is space whenever they walk in. Everything's completely destroyed. No sign of Kirk. As far as history is concerned, that's where he died at. So we skip from there to 2371, and the crew of the Enterprise D, they're on the holodeck on a computer simulation celebrating the promotion of shipmate Worf to Lieutenant Commander. Picard gets called away, learns that his brother and his nephew have been killed in the fire. Now, if you've seen The Next Generation, you'll know the two characters that they're talking about, and a bit of a strained history between Picard and his brother, which, they kind of mended fences a little bit, but I don't think that he ever really, after that, got involved as much in the family. And now that he's found out that they're dead, he always considered the fact that his brother had a child, that the name Picard would live on. But now he's thinking, you know what, the bloodline, his family bloodline, is going to end with him once he dies. They receive a distress call from a stellar observatory where the Ilarian Dr. Tolian Soren is doing research, and he launches a probe to nearby. There's a new word for you. He's launched a probe at a nearby star. The probe causes the star to implode, creating a shock wave that will destroy the planetary system. Soren, this is cut in the movie down in a big, big bad way. Soren kidnaps Geordie, and he's transported off the station to a Klingon board of prey belonging to the Duras sisters. Now, again, if you know Star Trek: The Next Generation, and if memory serves, now DS9, in all honesty, I'm running a science fiction Star Trek podcast here. You would think I'd be better informed on a show like DS9. Like, according to all reports, it's probably one of the best Star Trek series ever to be produced. I cannot speak tonight. They were a pain in the backside throughout The Next Generation, and they did pop up a few times in DS9, if memory serves. Like in DS9, I kind of just skimmed the surface of that show, just where I was at in life. Didn't get much of a chance to actually watch it whenever it was on, the first run been aired. The Duras sisters, they're assisting Soren in exchange for weapon plans. Basically, Guinan, where the hell did I get that? That's a monster from Godzilla. Guinan. This is the only Star Trek movie that I think she was in. I need to think about that. Honestly, I can't remember Guinan being in any other Star Trek movies. I think she was only in this one. But she tells Picard that she and Soren were among the Elorians rescued in 2293 by the Enterprise B, and that it starts to bring in the two generations here. They're matching up. The Elorian, they live for God knows how long their lifespan is, but it's a heck of a lot longer than your average human. And Soren is obsessed with re-entering the energy ribbon to reach the Nexus, which is basically an extra dimensional realm that exists outside of normal space-time, and it's almost as if you're in heaven. Everything that you really want, you can create there. And everybody that was rescued from the ship at the beginning of the movie, you see within the film itself that the life signs are fluctuating. It's because they're kind of in normal space-time, but they're also in the Nexus at the same time. They're on that verge of being in the Nexus while they've still been outside the Nexus. So whenever they were saved, Guinan, she says, for the longest time she wanted to go back, but if Soren is still obsessed with it, like he's going to be a really, really dangerous person. Time has got absolutely no meaning in the Nexus. You're pretty much, you're in heaven, you're in pure joy, essentially, and you're existing outside of space-time, so you're living forever in your own perfect world. So they figure out the big plan by Soren is to destroy suns, basically wiping out entire star systems and screwing about with the gravitation on each system and moving the ribbon towards where he wants it to go. So he wants it to go towards the Viridian system. So there's a whole thing in this movie too of Data getting himself the emotion chip. Now I'm trying to recall, because it has been quite a long time since I watched The Next Generation. There was a storyline of like a personality chip that Data's creator had built, but the evil robot brother of Data had stolen it, and I think whenever he was finally kind of captured and they cleaned up his storyline, there was never much more said about this emotion chip, but he had originally stole it and put it under his own head and whatnot. But I would need to actually watch the series again and get that better sorted out in my dome before I start talking about it, because just at the moment it sounds like I'm just talking out of my arse, which isn't so far from the truth. Right, back to Generations. When they get to the Viridian system, Picard offers himself to the Duras sisters in exchange for the Forge, but insists that he be transported to Sorn on the planet so he can try to talk him out of his fiendish plan. You know, the villainous twirling his mustache plan, basically, is what Sorn really is in this movie. And so the Duras sisters agree to this all too easily, I have to say. But their plan is they've screwed about with Geordie's visor, and they put him back on board the ship. And their plan is to figure out the shield harmonics. Well, the shields of the Enterprise are up because they're face to face with a Bird of Prey, even though the Enterprise far outmatches the Bird of Prey. They know this. They don't want to battle with Enterprise unless they get an upper hand on it. So they want to find out the exact polarization, or whatever you want to call it, of the shields of the Enterprise, so they can set their torpedoes to actually pierce the shields and cause the maximum amount of damage possible. So when Picard's in the surface, they attack. Geordie's in the ship. They get the details they need from engineering through his visor. They set their torpedoes and attack Enterprise. And I wasn't expecting Enterprise to be taken out so quickly going into the Next Generation movies. Now, people have said that I don't see how this works really. They're saying the design of the Enterprise D looks good on television, but wouldn't really look good on cinema widescreen back in the day. That could just be some movie nerd trying to sound smart online, bit like myself. But I would have thought they would have maybe waited to the second movie, perhaps the third. I don't think they'd be stupid enough to actually, whenever the movie started again originally for the original generation crew, Enterprise got destroyed in Star Trek 3. We'll bet 3 films and do that too. I don't think they'd be as stupid to do something like that there, but I would have thought probably the second movie. And but they take Enterprise out in this here, and fairly decent form. It was a long time since I seen the Enterprise separating the saucer from the drive section, and they do that in this. They're attacked by the Bird of Prey, but Enterprise takes it out on fairly short notice, fairly short order, I should say. But they've inflicted enough damage to cause a warp core breach on the Enterprise, so they evacuate everyone to the saucer section. And just as the saucer is flying away from the drive section explodes and knocks the saucer section into the planet's orbit, and it comes crashing to a halt on the surface of the planet. It's it's a very, very, really well done sequence in the movie. Awesome. But Picard fails on his mission with Soren to try and talk him out of things, and Soren launches the rocket, blows up the star in the Viridian system, takes out all the planets, and you see the planet exploding, and then you get this shot of the saucer section of Enterprise on the surface, and the whole planet just erupting around it. We cut to black, and we end up inside the Nexus. Soren succeeded, got into the Nexus, but he took Picard with him. And when Picard's in there, he comes across Guinan in the Nexus, and she explains, I'm not the person you knew, I'm like an echo of the person you know, sort of a thing, a piece of her that she left behind. And that's kind of weird in that section of the movie that this version of Guinan would know Picard and, you know, have the history joined up unless she's kind of connected to Guinan out in the real world. You know, you'd think after all these years of been two parts of the one person been separated, this version wouldn't know what the real life version of Guinan would know. But Guinan was always a character that they never really figured out. There was a lot of mystery about her. But basically she tells him that there's a person in the Nexus that can help him, and she can't leave because she's already there, sort of a thing. And this is where Picard and Kirk get joined together in the movie. But Kirk, you know, from his point of view, you know, time doesn't exist here, so basically when Picard meets him at the end of the movie, this is, as far as Kirk is concerned, it's literally a split second after what happened on the Enterprise B. So when he discovers what the Nexus is and the possibilities it can afford him, he doesn't want to leave. You know, he's finally found something that, you know, he can be happy, he can rest and whatnot. And there's a whole load of things that, you know, you see this girl up in the horizon, and it's a woman that he loved years ago, but he put his career in front of the relationship, and one of his big regrets and whatnot. But, you know, there's a whole horse riding sequence in this movie that I do believe William Shatner had to get put in there, because he was big into horse riding in real life, and I do believe, if memory serves, that the horse he rides in this movie is actually his own horse in real life. But there's a part where he jumps the horse over like this little gully sort of a thing, and he stops and he turns and he comes and jumps over it again, and Picard comes riding up on another horse, and Kirk was like, you know, I must have jumped that 100 times whenever I was a kid, and it scared the hell out of me every time, apart from this time, because it's not real. And this is where the penny starts to drop for him, and, you know, he has the conversation of you know, Picard, you know, captain of the Enterprise, close to retirement sort of a thing, and Picard's like, I'm not planning on it, and Kirk's like, don't let them do anything that'll take you off the bridge of that ship, because as long as you're there, you can make a difference. And he's like, he agrees to come back with him. He goes, you know, it sounds like it's going to be fun, and that was a big thing for Kirk. You know, everything, he needed a bit of fun to the missions and whatnot. So, of course, they're existing outside of time, so whenever they leave the Nexus, they can return to any point in time they want. So, you know, Kirk could quite easily go back to the start of the Enterprise B mission at the start of the movie, stop himself from getting into the Nexus in the first place. But him being the dedicated Starfleet officer that he is, he accompanies Picard to the planet in the Viridian system just before Soren destroys it, after Enterprise D has been, you know, written off basically. But this time the two of them join forces against Soren and manage to stop him taking out the star, and during which Picard fighting Soren, Kirk ends up falling pretty much to, not his death, but he's critically injured at the end of the film. And when Soren is defeated, Picard comes to see him, and Kirk is, you know, in his last moments, he's like, did we save? Did we get him? Did we save the planet and whatnot? Did we save the universe? And Picard's like, yes, thank you so much, sort of a deal. And Kirk smiles and he's like, that was fun. And then he dies. Now, people would say Star Trek 5, I did say it in my podcast on it, that there's the whole thing Kirk brought up, that he always knew that he was going to die alone, and that's why whenever he fell off the mountain at the start of Star Trek 5, he didn't die because he knew McCoy and Spock were both with him. So one of the biggest criticisms I've heard in the past of this movie was that, Kirk didn't die on his own. Picard was with him. But when you think about it, Kirk is out of time here. He's out of his own time period. He spent a bit of time in the Nexus. He's ended up in the future. Yes, Captain Picard was physically with him when he died, but all the people that Kirk knew and considered friends and family are long since gone. So basically, as far as the people that were alive in his time, they're all gone. So basically he's on his own. Even though he's in the future, there's somebody with him. You can say, from a certain point of view, well, Star Wars this shit, from a certain point of view, he does die alone at the end of the movie. So there's a nice little shot of Picard standing on top of this mountain top, and this mound of stones, which is basically a little grave that he's made for Kirk, and he sets Kirk's little Starfleet badge on top of it, and he has a moment of, having a little memorial for him on the mountaintop. And the film finishes off essentially with the survivors of the Enterprise D getting rescued by other Starfleet vessels, and they have a moment between Picard and Riker on the bridge of the destroyed Enterprise D. Picard getting some family mementos and, photographs of his brother and his nephew, and Riker saying, I really thought I would get a shot at this chair one day, and Picard's like, maybe you will. Somehow I don't think this will be the last ship to carry the name Enterprise, and we close out the film there, really. This is, as I did say, probably not one of the stronger ones out of the series, but a very enjoyable one, especially if you're into the original series and Star Trek The Next Generation. But newer audiences might have a bit of a hard time with it. It's a bit of a slow burn in places. 118 minutes long. The budget for it was $35 million, which doesn't sound a lot considering the stuff that they pulled off in this movie. But the box office record it's given here is 180 million it made. So definitely a success, this film, and it couldn't be anything else whenever you consider that it's a crossover movie between the original series cast and the Next Generation cast. Something we never really expected them to do on screen. There was a few episodes in the Next Generation where you got a few cameos from original characters from the original series. Like the first episode of the Next Generation has Dr. McCoy in it, briefly at the very beginning of it, having a look about the newly named Enterprise. And I'm pretty sure I'm maybe missing someone else out here, but there's an excellent episode where Scotty comes back into it, and I can't wait to actually get to the podcast where we talk about that one, because it is a nice episode. But yeah, I think that's going to do it for this episode here, guys. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you have not been a big fan of the Star Trek movies, I apologise for destroying it for you, because that's pretty much exactly what this podcast was. It was a spoiler for the series, or the movie, so I should have actually said that at the very start. Yes, definitely check it out. It is a good time to be had all around, and stay safe, guys, and I'll talk to you in the next episode. This has been a production of Coins Age Media.